Welcome to Finance Revealed. Watch the complete video to discover new market secrets. Subscribe now.
Charles, welcome back to Real Vision.
It's good to be here, Ash. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. You know, you were last on, I believe, in December of 2017, my first week at Real Vision. So much has happened between now and then, right? So I think there are a lot of people out there right now who have just started to get their head around what Bitcoin is and potentially around what Ethereum is. They understand it's a digital store of value, kind of a metaphor for gold. They understand smart contracts are the ability to execute code on a blockchain. What is it exactly that Cardano does for people who are not eyeball deep in the digital asset space?
Yeah, so basically it's just a collection of protocols and technology that allows you to transform, store, and manage value, identity, and governance. So if you have an instrument of value, that could be a stock, a bond, a commodity, a token, an NFT, like a Pokemon card. It doesn't really matter. You need some place to store it, transmit it. You need some place to build contractual relationships around it. Like, I'll give you my Pokemon cards if you mow my lawn, that type of a deal. Okay. Identity is, who are you? Normally we take that for granted. Oh, I have passport, I have driver's license, but you have credit score. Is it a fair credit score? Maybe, maybe not. For some bizarre reason, my secretary has a higher credit score than I do, and I'm a billionaire. So I'm just trying to figure that one out. So there's something about that system that doesn't seem intrinsically right, but okay. And so there's a lot of these things that don't make a lot of sense in how identity is brokered and handled in our world, but in the developing world, it's non-existent in many places. There's tons of people there that are brilliant, that are honest, that are very hardworking, and they are completely shut off from the global economy because there's no way to assess whether that counterparty is reputable, trustworthy. Like, for example, microfinance. Let's say some guy runs a farm and says, I want $200, $300 for a loan for fertilizer. And if I do this, I can upgrade my farm, get much better yields, and I'll make windfall money, and I'll be able to pay that back. You say, great. 85% interest. You say, oh God, that's usurious. I say, well, how do I trust the counterparty? How do I know you're actually going to pay me back? The default rate may be high, may be low. There's no credit systems at a lot of these places. No. So identity is a huge problem. And that's why 3 billion people are under or unbanked in the entire world. And that's why remittances are 15%. That's why microfinance is so expensive. That's why we don't have good insurance markets in these places to protect people on the downside. So we need an engine for identity. And then finally, for governance, how do you govern things? Like, for example, these transnational trade agreements. I was just at a meeting with a major telco, and we were complaining about Verizon and Sprint and T-Mobile, and these agreements for roaming and these agreements for brokering data capacity amongst the networks. And it's just very ossified. So what happens when those telcos want to meet with Mobicom in Mongolia? What happens when those telecoms want to go meet with people in the UK or across the world? How do they broker transnational agreements? Is there just going to be one universal government to decide how telecommunications should work? Is the ITU going to somehow be in charge of every teleco in the world? No. You have to broker trust relationships between these entities to be able to move subscribers and data and other such things between networks, because we travel. If I land in Heathrow, I'd like, when I turn my phone on, for my phone to work. And it shouldn't take 500 lawyers and billions of dollars to make such an arrangement work. It should be seamless from one system to another system. And that's where there's Fortune 500. What about medical records? I've been 52 countries in the last few years, and I'm thinking, gosh, what if I got in a car accident in Tanzania and I'm unconscious? And this Tanzanian doctor calls my doctor in Colorado and says, hey, Charles is unconscious, but I need all of his medical records because I'm trying to treat him. No, trust me, I'm real and legit. He can't talk to you, though, because he's unconscious. How does he get my medical records to treat me? I could be gone for days, and there might be vital information there. So there's just a simple problem brokering the movement of medical records from one country to another country. And that's the point of these protocols, is that there's a million of these problems, whether it be the adulteration of drugs, like Mongolia, a third of all the medicine in that country is in some way bad. It could be expired or mislabeled or counterfeit. So if you're trying to take an antibiotic, you have 1/3 chance of getting a bad pill. That's a problem. And the point of our industry, this technology, is to say it's a Swiss Army knife of protocols where you can build applications on top of it that handle that brokering of value, identity, and governance so that you can solve real problems. And you can solve them in a way where everybody participating in them, they all know the rules up front. Okay, they don't have a situation where one party knows more than another party. There's no information asymmetry. They don't have a situation where there's a gatekeeper who can shut you out, even in the social media side of things, the deplatforming. The reason that happens is the social networks are the boat and the river. They are the ones who get you into the flow of information, but they also own the river. So they get to decide which boats get to sail there. So if you're on Twitter and you get deplatformed, you lose access to the entire Twitter network, and you're no longer a member of that massive community. The same for Facebook or so forth. And it's even worse that the places where they're not the river, they cooperate with each other. And they'll say, well, if somebody competes with us and we don't like their values, we're going to deplatform them so they have no marketplace. That's because the protocols are the companies together. And wherever you fall politically on that, maybe you're a winner in that, maybe you're a loser in that, but it's a real bad idea in society for only a small group of companies to have so much control over so many people and be unelected and unaccountable to the democratic process. And so the point of this protocol approach is saying, let's reimagine these things where we separate the boats from the river. Let's reimagine these things where we start with the trust relationships and say, what are the rules for everybody? And then how do we broker the flow of information and value? And how do we govern that in a way that's equally fair to everyone? And then you could build solutions on top of it. And then suddenly you have medicine that's not adulterated. Suddenly you can have freedom of speech if that's important to you. Suddenly you can now have a situation where you can get a loan that doesn't cost 85% interest. Suddenly you can get remittances where you can instantly move money to your family back in Mexico City or in Cebu, and it doesn't cost you $15 to move $100. It costs you 5 pennies.
In terms of pragmatically, where are we right now with Cardano in the process of realizing that vision?
What's great is there's a lot of competitors. There's Algorand and Tezos, and there's F2 and so forth. And all of us are kind of scratching at the same things. And that's great because there's strength in numbers, and they have different philosophies and teams and scientific approaches. And so somebody's going to get it done. Cardano, I think, is the leader right now in terms of, because we did the deep investments in science and we did the deep investments in proper engineering, and we have market access to the places where I think this is going to shine the brightest. As I said, I'm not here to make the 17-year-old yield farmer in his mom's basement in New Jersey rich. I mean, he'll figure it out for himself. He's okay. I'm worried about the farmer in Ethiopia. But, regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, there's enough people here that we're starting to see very real progress on scalability, sustainability, and interoperability. There's protocols like NEPA-POWs and a lot of cool sidechain protocols that exist to move value and information between systems. The Oracle systems like Chainlink and so forth have really evolved, and they've gotten to a point where they're starting to become great protocols, and the next generation of them are going to be phenomenal. We're starting to see tons of very scalable engines to replace that steam engine of proof of work be proposed that are academically reviewed and tested at scale. And so there's an inevitability behind that. The hard part is governance, and that's a huge experiment. I think we're the leader in that because we have something called Catalyst, and we have over 10,000 people actively participating, voting, debating. And before the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised to see that grow to 100,000 people. And it's going to be funding tens, eventually hundreds of millions of dollars worth of project, and then eventually used for governance, where it actually will decide how to upgrade the system. And we've built that with great universities like University of Lancaster. We've built that with European Union grants like the Horizons 2020 program with IBM Research and Guard Time. So we have a lot of great partners there. And people like IdeaScale, they work with us. The CEO of that group, I think, is going to be running a Cardano stake pool. But that's just the beginning. And that's probably the hardest of all the problems because we don't really have a model. It's one thing to say, is there something that runs with billions of people? Sure, Google, great, okay. Or Windows. All right, so we have that. Interoperability, we have Wi-Fi, it works, right? So we have this concept of something that's universal. But is there a perfect government? Is there like one country on the map you can point to and say, everything there works? It's utopia land. No, humans are humans. There's no one of anything. How many languages do we have? I had an employee who spoke Aramaic. I was like, wow, I didn't even know that language is. I have these clay tablets from Babylon. I mean, it's like he probably can read them. It's a crazy thing to have that kind of concept. Governance is the hardest of all of it. And I think that's going to take decades of my career to get there. But we have a process to gradually move in the right direction. And there's going to be a lot of setbacks and failures and so forth. But real use and utility, that's going to be happening at scale, I think, in 3 to 5 years, where millions of people are going to earn their living working in this industry, and it's sustainable. Millions of people will be getting loans from this industry on a regular basis. Millions of people getting their insurance policy from this. Billions, if not trillions of dollars will be moved in remittances every year through this system on its rails at a super low cost. That's 3 to 5 years, I think. That's inevitable. And also, you're going to see institutional competition. Only a third of central banks are BIS members, and 2/3 are not, and they get screwed by the 1/3 who are. So there's all these CBDCs, central bank issued digital currencies. We think of the Bank of China, we think of the Federal Reserve, but Angola and Zimbabwe and all these other guys who say, hey, how about we get some fairness finally? So if they don't get it from BIS, they're going to create their own rails, and they're going to be using our technology to create those types of rails. So 3 to 5 years, all that's coming, and that'll lead to the next wave and the next wave. And within 20 years, I think it's inevitable.
Ethereum staking, Ethereum or Bitcoin, Ethereum news today, Ethereum forecast, Ethereum founder, Ethereum mining, Ethereum price prediction, Ethereum price, Ethereum news, Ethereum network.